If you could have a coach help you identify and focus on what's important, would that accelerate your success? If you answered yes, then this podcast is for you. Each week, my guests, professional coaches, will share one actionable piece of advice to help you level up wherever you need it most. My name is Chris Ippolito, and welcome to the Get Coached podcast. Hi, John.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm spectacular. Thank you.
Thanks for being a guest on the Get Coached podcast. So I wanted to dive into something that I love the name of it, to be honest, but you have a trademarked process called Genius Talent. And obviously we can infer what that means, but I'd love if you could unpack that a little bit as far as what is Genius Talent and what does it help people do?
No, it's great. It's a great question. The theory is that in your DNA, you have a specific gift of talent that if it's in your DNA, by definition, you're the only person in the history of humanity who's ever had it, which is kind of crazy to think of. Well, then if I brought you a suitcase full of cash and said, all you have to tell me is what talent you got different than anybody else in the history of humanity, how you do it in a step-by-step process, and why, like your purpose on earth, that is your genius talent. It's those three things combined. And people look at us and go, I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that's super simple and it's brilliant in its simplicity, but the simplicity includes a brilliance that most people can't see. So it's both and. So people end up with what we call a genius talent statement. It states what they did, which is the gift they got, step by step, but they have figured out on their own that part they developed over the course of their life. And then they say, oh my gosh, I do this because I believe whatever they believe. And their why statement makes perfect sense in the context of the gift of talent they were given.
Right. Yeah, it does. And it sounds like what the process is more to help people identify what their genius talent is rather than kind of like telling them. Obviously, like I think for the most part, most coaching is about guiding and asking the right kinds of questions. But what I guess what does that process kind of look like? So I'll be honest, when you explain that, I look at myself and I go, well, I don't know what my genius talent is.
Most people don't.
Right.
So.
And so what would be some of the ways that you would help guide somebody to identify what their genius talent is?
Sure. So there's other people that do this sort of thing, but they tend to have boxes that you can fit in. So you're one of 60 kinds of geniuses, or one of 4. There's one that's 4 kinds of, only one of 4. Is the whole planet, made up of only 4 kinds of geniuses? To me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We say you're 1 in 7.8 billion as the population is today, but you're really 1 in the history of humanity. The process is pretty simple. We relax people. So we do a little bit of a guided meditation and relax them. We need to get into the limbic part of their brain where they store all of their emotions. It's essentially a newsreel of your entire life with every emotion you've ever had. But that part of your brain doesn't have any language, nor does it have logic. So if we questioned you and said, what do you think about this? Or could it be this or whatnot? That goes into the prefrontal neocortex, which is where we speak, we do rationalizing, analysis. You won't find it there. We have to get to the part that holds the emotions. We just connect them to a specific kind of emotion, essentially tied to high performance. And they connect to those episodes. Half the time they don't remember the story. I mean, they tell it and they say, oh, and afterwards we'll ask them, I said, when was the last time you told that story? And they said, I've never told that story. I forgot all about that. That happened in 5th grade. I completely forgot, because we bypassed their memory part and went to their emotional storage bank. And we don't access that very much. So that's the first thing we do. And that's all the raw material. We get these stories of high performance, and then we just look at them like a scientist and say, that's interesting. Chris had 4 stories, one about sports, one about school, one about a charity that he worked in, and one about an internship he had. It's not all sports themed. It's not all science. It's these four stories, and they all have patterns. We say, huh? And we just start asking people, it looks like there's this pattern. Tell us about that. Now you start iterating. All we do is capture it. And so people, it's what we call evoking is the name of our company, but evoking is to gently tease out. And that's what we do. We have it. It's not us telling them what their genius is. It's them telling us what it is. Now, of course, we know how to tease it out of them. And we do that very gently over about a 2-hour conversation. It's a very fun conversation. And we just keep reiterating. And the more you reiterate, the more the language either fits or doesn't fit, even though you give us the language, and we'll say, so is it synthesizing or processing? And they say, it's not either. It's collating. Do I care that it's collating versus synthesizing and processing? Not one bit, because I don't know the candidate well enough. It actually is an advantage. We can tease it out of somebody that we don't know because we don't have a preconceived notion about them. But at the end, they get this elegant statement that has what we call equal parts beauty and power. It's super powerful. The talent's super powerful, and it's got a beauty to it as well. And that's the discovery part. And then we invite people to put it to work. It's funny though, a lot of people don't. A lot of people do the discovery and then it scares them to death. It's super powerful, and they go, I can't. That was me on a good day. Say, no, it's not you on a good day. It shows up over and over and over again if you'll step into it. So
why do you think that comment about being afraid of it, I think holds really, really true to a lot of people.
Sure.
When you finally expose, whether it's, I think, to be honest, even like sharing personally and a little bit vulnerably, I would be scared to know what my true power was, because then I have almost no excuse as far as why am I not doing it kind of thing. Like if you were, I guess I can relate to why somebody would almost shy away from it or be intimidated or scared of it, because now you've just shown them like this thing that is just has this sense of like great power. And then, I'm going to have a nerd quote here, but with great power comes great responsibility. And
we say the same.
And I think it's the responsibility, actually, now that I'm kind of thinking this through, it's probably the responsibility side of it that would scare them more than anything else. Would you agree with that? Or do you think it's maybe something different?
It is. I'll tell you, the part that scares them the most is not the talent. It's the why.
Okay.
Because if your why is connected to your talent, we're going to tease it out of you, and it comes up quite naturally. It comes up simply and naturally at the end of the process. Now you've got a responsibility to live your purpose. Right. If not, you're what? Inauthentic, inconsistent. If I want to go crude, I could say you're a douchebag. Right. Because you say you're this, but you're really not. Yeah. So there's a responsibility to say, like my why is, I believe that when we play boldly together, everyone wins big. So the responsibility for me is to play boldly together, not solo, no ball hog, and have people win big. It's great if you can own that, and I own it really nicely. Like if somebody comes to me now and says, I got a little project I need help with. Little shuts me down. They don't even have to say anything more. And if little project to them is figuring out global climate change, I don't even get to that point, because the word little shuts me down, because I only do big and I only do bold. I just don't function well when I play timidly. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't play timidly at times, but I don't play well timidly. It's just not who I am. Okay, fine. But you're right. There's a responsibility. It's the same with awareness. Once you have the awareness, so if you do the discovery part 2 hours later and you've got your genius statement, it actually produces suffering if you're not going to use it, because now you are fully aware of it. You can't deny it because it came out of you. I didn't give it to you. You gave it to me, and I just wrote it down. Now you have it. Well, you're going to step into it or not. Now it actually produces suffering for people because they have to avoid it on purpose. Right. And that's for me the definition of suffering.
Do you think that when somebody is able to now going through a process like this, they start identifying that responsibility and the awareness, and like you said, if they shy away from it, it sends them down a bit of a different path of perhaps depression, anxiety, some
It's usually not that. It's usually avoidance.
avoidance.
It's usually
Okay.
something more subtle, but yeah.
Do you think it's possible then with like, because nowadays, depending the generation, well, it's supposedly it's more prevalent in the younger generation, but there's a lot of mental illness as far as depression
Yes.
and anxiety. Do you
Yeah.
think maybe there's a correlation with that and like subconsciously they know what their genius is, or like there's this voice in their head that they can't decipher, but it's telling them like you should be doing this, but then they're not living true to that. And then because there's this misalignment, it could be causing like these negative emotions and these negative feelings, and they just kind of start overpowering them because they just don't know how to deal with it.
It could be. I find more frequently that the Gen X, Gen Z, they like a purpose. If they go to work for a company, they want to say, oh, what is the why of this company, or what's the purpose of this company? They want to align their values with the company values. And the part that is a blind spot from where I sit, because I work in a lot of teams, is that the person who's insisting the company have their act together doesn't have theirs together. So they haven't gotten their personal values or their personal why or their purpose very well defined, and they want the company to give them purpose by the way the company works. And you say, boy, that's depression. Because the truth is, it's not the company's job to entertain you with their purpose. It's just not. There's a contract between you and me. If you hire me, I agree to give my full talent, my full ability, my full effort. And if there's parts of decisions that happen above me and I don't really agree with them, I can complain and quit, or I can say I signed up for this, and I the contract we have, like, and I mean like a handshake contract, not like a written contract, is you pay me and I give full effort.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's not a team in the history of teams where every decision that's made, you and I both agree with it. You say, there's times where we say, well, we got to go left center or we got to go far right, and we might get outvoted. We have to close ranks and say, I'm on the team. I either have to quit because I disagree with well, you'd be quitting every team. You'd quit every 3 weeks. Or you say, they decided to go left center and I thought we should have gone far right. All right, time for me to get over it and get on the bus and help them go full bore left center and make that a success.
Right.
And there's a piece of that I find with some of the younger generations where they want the company to more align with my values instead of the company saying, this is what we stand for. Please come join us and be great here. Yeah. And oh, by the way, your personal values probably will align just fine, but they won't be exactly the same. It's fine. We can peacefully coexist. If you're a cannibal, you're not going to go to a vegan food company. You're just not. So don't go there. But, generally speaking, people's values can align pretty easily if we've got any tolerance or acceptance. And the suffering I see is from two things. One is from an over dependence on technology, like on your phone all the time, and it's isolation. Mm-hmm. And then this other feeling of being lost because somebody has to give me my purpose. Say, no, it's nobody's job to give you your purpose. It's your job to figure out your purpose and live your purpose. So
right.
That's a big piece of what we end up doing.
Yeah. I think that I like that statement as far as the lack of purpose leading to concerns or issues or whatever it is, challenges. Yeah. Because and everybody's challenges is going to vary from in degrees, right? Some people it sends them down a very deep and dark valley, whereas others they have a rough day or two or whatever it is.
But, right.
Yeah. So when somebody goes through that process and then comes out of it, what I get, for me, it feels like they would have to be starting to form almost like a new habit. So now they've got their true genius kind of revealed to them, or they've uncovered it. They now finally see it. And perhaps they've had their moments in the past of executing on that. Now through your process, that's what it is. That's my true genius. But do you find that people have a difficult time in being consistent with that? Or now because they've seen it, they're like, they just have this new fire lit and they just are pumped to just do it all the time?
You usually not, because your genius is so specific that you'd have to really be on target all the time to say, I can play, or we say play in my genius all the time. What we do know, though, is that when the circumstance, we call it the precursors or the preconditions, when the circumstances arise where your genius is needed, you cannot not do your genius. So let's say, I mean, take a more comical example. OCD is not a genius, but you know people who are OCD, they cannot go into you cannot go into a kitchen with dishes in the sink and not get them all rinsed and cleaned and in the dishwasher because it's disorganized and crazy. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You cannot not do that. That's not a genius talent, but it's the same sort of thing. When you step into an arena where your talent is absolutely required and necessary, it's like a magnet. You'll start doing it automatic. You'll love it. You'll lead naturally. People say, well, I'm not really a leader. In your genius talent, you'll lead, if not, maybe not by voice, you'll lead by example, simply because he'll say, this Chris guy came in here and I'll tell you, he took over the whole charity. He was great with the kids. He was great with this. He did it. And you say, right, because if you look at his genius talent, all of the conditions that are required for him to show up absolutely in full power were there. And they say, so his genius is about this talent, or is it about this charity? No, it has nothing to do with the charity. It has to do with all the conditions that were at the charity. And that might also show up at work. It might show up with kids. It might show up with you can show up 100 different places, but the frame is all there. You say, oh, it's got this, 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 and this. Chris is going to absolutely shine.
Right.
And by the way, he's going to be a magnet for this. We don't have to force you to do it. You're going to say, I could help with that. And you'll run the whole darn thing within 3 minutes because it's a natural fit for you. And I would walk into the same situation and go, I don't know what you want me to do. I could dig a hole maybe. Why don't I just wipe things down and why don't I spritz them with water bottle and sweat towels and just stay out of the way? And you say, yeah, that would actually be the best thing to do if you're in your genius talent, is to just let you go and support you however I could.
Right. Okay. That helps me kind of clear things up a lot for just in my, all of a sudden it just was like, bam. Oh, okay. Now I get it. Because all of a sudden I was able to think of some moments in my past where I stepped into an environment where there was a new workplace or there was something going on. And I was just like, oh, well, this is where I excel. Let me let me help kind of thing. Yeah. Do this, do that. Let me blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden it was like, holy moly, like how did he do that so quickly?
And you don't need training. You don't need nothing. There's no ceiling on your capability. They just say, throw them into this. And it could be chaos for somebody like me. And you'll walk in and go, I can do this all day, every day. And I'd feel fully energized at the end of the day. And I'd think, it wears me out just looking at it.
Right.
We're just different talents.
I guess then my question would be, would it not make sense that once you've uncovered your genius talent, that you would want to intentionally put yourself in positions where you get to use it as often as possible? You can't do it all the time, perhaps, but you would want to put yourself in situations where you can leverage it, because leverage is what's going to lead to great success, right? So would that not make sense? I'm trying to wrap my mind around how if I uncover my genius talent, wouldn't I want to use it as frequently as possible?
No, that makes so much sense. And what we found, we did about 2,000 of these, and we had very little adoption rate. People said they literally would cry. They'd get it and they'd cry and say, oh my God, how did you know? We didn't know them from Adam until we met them the day of and did it in 2 hours. And they said, how could you see me this clearly? Nobody's ever seen me this way. Yeah, great. Well, because the process teases it out. The logical thing you'd say is, well, of course they'd then start redesigning their life and take full advantage of it. Nope. And it took 2,000, like 2.5 years before one of my partners who worked with me on the project said, we've gone from discovery to implementation. And that's logical. He said, we're skipping the most important piece, and we just didn't see it. Think of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You're Spider-Man, and his genius talent is really not the webs, but let's say it's the webs. I mean, nobody else can do that. If you weren't sure that every time you sprayed your web going down Broadway in New York, going from building to building, swinging from building to building, if you weren't sure that every time it would stick and support you, would you ever take off? No chance, because you're dead on the pavement and an 18-wheeler runs right over your head.
Right.
So we were missing the fact that people can't go from that immediate shock and delight of, oh my God, this is great and I love it, and an emotional moment, right into, I'm going to change my whole life. They have to start owning it, because up until that moment, they didn't even know what it was. So we just said, you've got this superpower or this genius talent. They don't immediately go into, how am I going to redesign my life? They have to do ownership. And the ownership is actually the most delicate part. So we give them suggestions on how to take on ownership. And one of them, when we talk to people, generally speaking, 99 times out of 100, we don't know who they are. And the process works better when we don't, because we don't have a dog in the fight. We don't try to project them as something. It makes us use the process. One of the things we do afterwards is to say, go meet with 3 people who know you, the 3 people who know you best on the planet. Go take this back to them. Bring your sheet that looks, here's your statement, yay, and say, I've been working on this concept called genius talent, and I want, quote, your critical feedback. You want people who know you really well to tear it apart, because we didn't know you before we met you. Find out now, but if you went to those people at the beginning, they would be biased, and they'd say, oh, you're probably this or this or this, or they'd give you what they need you to be or want you to be. They're not helpful at the beginning. On the back end, they're super helpful, because they'll say, you use the word synthesizing, and I think it's collaborating. Good. That's super helpful, because they know you so well. They say, you're not a synthesizer, you're a collaborator. Great. They're going to poke holes in it, and they'll say, why do you say this? I've never experienced you that way. Great. So what they're going to do is they're going to help you own it more, because they're going to say, they're not going to tear it apart. They're going to find small refinements, edits, or what happens a lot, people come back and say, I met with 3 people. We had a great 45-minute conversation and tried to pick it apart. Every one of them said, there's nothing wrong with this. This is exactly you. Now I'm going to own it a little bit, because 3 people who know me really well say, where'd you get this? How did you find this? This is exactly you. And of course, had they gone to their best friend at the beginning and said, give me this, they couldn't have done it. There's just no way they could have done it, because they just didn't have a frame to do it. We invented a frame that reveals it. Then on the back end, we say, the only way to own it is to have somebody validate it. And it can't be us, because we don't know you well enough to do that. We pulled it out and said, sure seems right, because you told us. We didn't tell you, you told us. We're just reflecting back what you told us. Now go find out from people who know you really well, and they will. And we've never had somebody come back and say they trashed it, and I think we have to start over. Sometimes they'll come back and say they think my why is a little too hallmark. They think it's a little too airy-fairy, so they helped me get a more authentic why. Great, perfect. That's really helpful. That's critical feedback.
Right.
But the talent has, we've done it about 8,000 times. So the talent's never changed. The talent, they don't come back and say you're totally off base. They might alter some words. Fine, it's good. But the theme doesn't change.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Now that you've explained it, I can see why adding like another step or multiple steps until they get to that point where they're like maximum capacity, leveraging and leaning into their genius talent, because
well, and they're not scared to death.
Yeah.
Because the story they have is, oh, I was never really good at that as a kid, maybe based on school, or and genius, people think of like math and science or IQ.
Yeah.
We say it's a talent. Talent is totally different than aptitude. So they want mental or academic aptitude, or your grades in high school, or some crazy construct that they have in their head, instead of your genius talented. I mean, mine is creating seemingly impossible outcomes. There's no SAT or college entrance exam for creating seemingly impossible outcomes. It's a talent. It's not a profession, and it's not a subject you study in school. I can't go to a class saying creating seemingly impossible outcomes 101. There is none. And people have said, can you teach me how to do it? And I said, it's always customized. So
Right.
the problem is, the great thing is, it has to be impossible. Not in my eyes, but in theirs. So they say, we got this impossible situation. There's no recipe for that. I walk in and I look at it and I figure out iteratively, and we do it as we go. And at the end, you get this elegant solution. People say, that's impossible. How'd you do that? And I said, I don't know. I never know how I'm doing it, except while I'm doing it, it just looks like play, and it's super fun. Everybody else says, if you fail, this whole thing goes under. I said, we're not going to fail. I know we won't fail. I don't quite know what it'll look like at the end when I start, but I know up front, yeah, we can do this. Okay. Well, I can't teach that to somebody else. I'm not a teacher. And if you don't have that talent, you wouldn't be able to learn it the way that I could, if I could, because we have different skill sets. And yours will be equally as valuable, just something different. I will want yours and you will want mine. We call that genius envy.
Right.
Everybody wants everybody else's. They say, oh,
Yeah.
theirs is all about caring. I'm not a very good carer. I wish I had theirs. Well, you don't. So get on with it. You got what you got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and yours is super powerful and super valuable. Yeah, make a life with the talent you got. And maybe there's a reason you got yours. Live with it. It's like figure that out and go. So
I think what would be a better mindset is find somebody that you maybe are envious of and create a dynamic duo,
right.
And like you guys, like a partnership or something to
three-person
leverage.
Partnership, very different skill sets. Yeah.
Because to me, the way I would look at that is you got genius talent combined with genius talent, and you've got like this almost exponential results.
And the last thing you need is three that are really similar. You go, well, that's great. Everybody can do one thing pretty well, but nobody can do the 70% of the rest of the business that we need.
Yeah.
Much better to have three very different, and honor and respect it and say, oh, this is Chris. You know what? This is a negotiation. Chris is better at negotiations because he's better with people and this and that. Let's send Chris in. I say, but Chris hasn't been part of this whole conversation. That's okay. He has no ceiling, and he'll naturally do a better job than I will, even if I have all the context and all the information, because it's not my strong suit.
Right.
Lead with the guy who's, or the person who's going to be most effective, and they'll have a blast doing it, and they'll get a better result.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it
works that way.
Obviously at this point, like I'm starting to think like maybe I think I can sort of spot it, but so now if the audience is kind of in this similar position as me, and they're going like,
sure.
Oh geez, like their wheels are turning, like maybe it's this, maybe it's that. What would be the next step that they would want to take so that they could maybe get a little bit closer to identifying what that genius talent could be?
It's great. So it's a good question. People think it's an assessment. Like you go online and take these assessments that say, oh, you're a red, blue, yellow, green, or you're a ABCD, or you're a whatever. I love those. This isn't that. It's a process, and it's what we would call a framework. And as long as we stay in the tool, it reveals to you, and you tell us what it is. But there's no way you can just say, well, can I do this by myself? The reason you can't do it by yourself, by definition, and there's a reason we think, people have blind spots. By definition, my wife kids me and says, my only blind spot is thinking I don't have any. And that's kind of a gigantic blind spot.
Yeah.
But we all have blind spots. And for our talent, you and I were kidding on this in the prep for the call, but your talent is right here. And it's not a blind spot behind you. It's a blind spot. It's so close you can't see it. And all we do is pull it out like this. And we pull it out 18 inches. And you tell us what it is. We're just making your focus 18 inches. And people can see that really well. There's a process online that people can do for free. You can go to geniustalent.net or 1 in a Billion book. There's a book that outlines the whole thing, but it's all online, and people can do it by themselves. Now, what we'll do, we just said you can't do it by yourself because of blind spots. We'll team you up with learning partners. Great. It's fun, super cheap, like less than $10, or people can hire. They can hire a coach. Some people say, I'd rather do it one-on-one and do it in 2 hours. My time's worth more money. fine.
Yeah.
Either way, though, you've got to have other people, because you're not going to be able to see past your blind spots by definition. So quick story, we had a good friend of mine runs a he's an entrepreneur, very successful company, and he's all about this. They won't let anybody in their company that doesn't know their genius talent, and there's different ways they call it zone of genius or genius talent or unique genius. Fine. So what he did before he started the company, he took 90-day sabbatical, and 40 hours a week, he read about it, he thought about it, he took assessment tests, he did, and he was going to figure it out himself, because he was sure you should be able to figure this stuff out by yourself. It can't be that different. What he came up with is he came up with 5 possible genius talents. And this was from talking to people and getting feedback. And he did you can't believe how comprehensive this was. That was the problem. Because if you don't know what it is before you start, even if you nail it, and one of his 5 was close, but not great. And I said, so do you know which one it is? And he said, no, I figured you could tell me. And I said, well, I can't just pick one of the 5. I can't tell by looking at you. But we could go, in his case, I knew it would only take about 90 minutes, and it did. And he said, that's so interesting. It was 80% of one and a little bit of 2 others, because all of those were talents he had, but he didn't know which one was at a genius level, because he was trying to figure it out himself. So how would you know once you get there, it's this one, because you'd have to know what it was that you were looking for. He didn't know what he was looking for. So it's impossible to do by yourself. And that's why I wrote the book, because my publisher said, you're the impossible guy. Who else is going to figure this stuff out? I said, oh, right. It's actually not what I said. It was an expletive. But so I wrote the book, and then we built this web portal so people can do it by themselves, because it's massively transformative. If the planet can say, wait a minute, individuals know what their genius is. Now we can put them to work. And I don't mean work, but we can put them functionally to solve every major problem we have, because somebody will see it from this weirdly unique way and figure out global warming, or figure out homelessness, or figure out the wealth gap, or figure out all kinds of problems we just can't figure out.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen by giving it to an organization and say, you guys institutionally should do this. Maybe, but they haven't done it, or they would have already done it. So we think genius talent is the way to go with that.
Sounds like it. I'm trying to it within my context here. I'm trying to
people ask us 2 questions. If I gave it to you, could you tell me if it's right? Or you've been around me for a half hour. Do you have any hint of what mine is? It doesn't work like that. It's not palm reading. We don't intuit. We tease it out of people. You tell us what it is. We don't tell them, but they think that we're going to tell them, give them the answer. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And it kind of follows the old, theory as humans. When you have an idea, it's a great idea. When I give you my idea, you're going to push back and question a little bit, just because even the language is different. You can hear your own ideas and you love your own ideas. We don't falsify it and have people fall in love with their own ideas. In fact, we push them. We say, so is it this or is it that? And they say, well, but walk me through that. You said it was that. And they resolve it all for themselves, and it's all their language at the end. That's why the language it follows a format, but the language is very, very different from candidate to candidate. Some are very eloquent and poetic, and some are very analytical. Some are perfunctory. Some are, it can be almost any style. They all fit the same format, though.
Yeah. My wheels are turning a lot. I'm trying to figure it out on my own, but obviously,
we'll just set you up for a 2-hour process. It's easy. We just need 2 hours uninterrupted. And at the end, you'll say, what the hell? How did you know this? I don't know it. I know the process, and the process works. I've done 8,000 of them. There's no way I could know 8,000 people well enough to be able to say, oh yeah, it's you, for you, it's this. No, I don't.
That's awesome. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about you and the genius talent, where can they find, what's the best place to go?
So I've got a great advantage in life. My last name is Hitler. So I Google amazingly well. There's nobody else trying to get that SEO. So anything under my name, it comes up with, our company, the books, all that kind of stuff. So it's because I own all the SEO on that, because nobody else wants my name. So I don't have a business card for that reason too. But the website that they probably want is either geniustalent.net or oneinaBillionBook.com, because it's the book. We wrote the formula, we wrote the book and put it in a like an experiential web portal, but it's based on the book. And
Okay.
so either one of those are good. But if they can't remember that, most people don't remember my name, because you're not going to walk around and say, "What's the name of that book?" I can't remember the name of the book. But Hitler, they'll go, "God, the guy's name was Hitler."
Yeah.
So,
I'll include all the show notes or the links in the show notes.
Yeah, that's fine. But that's the easy one. Just go to my last name, and it's spelled with 2 T's, but even with 1 T, I don't know 50 the top SEOs.
Perfect.
You'll say, "You're so lucky." I say, "Yeah, try it in 4th grade." It's you'd say it was bad luck in 4th grade.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, John. Really appreciated the conversation, and I'm curious now. I really want to find out what my genius talent.
Oh, well, afterwards we'll just shoot me an email. I'll set you up with a 2-hour private session, and you'll know it in about 2 hours. And it's super fun too. It's a fun process. It's probably like nothing else you've ever done, but it's very fun. And afterwards you'll say, "Man, I can't believe this. This is super cool. I have no idea what it is, but the world's waiting." That's what we say, is the world is waiting for your talent.
I like that. Cool. All right. Thanks, John.
All righty. All the best. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Get Coached podcast. If you're looking for more information, you can head over to our website, which is getcoachedpodcast.com. You'll find the show notes for this and every other episode there. And if getting actionable advice every week from professional coaches is something you want more of, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.